Hi. Okay, tune-up is over. Hey, how you doing? Oh, the old ring light reflection in the glass. Well, gonna have to deal with that tonight. I got to give people an opportunity to shuffle in. Oh, Annie, you made it. Thank you. You see, and you were a little bit unsure of yourself. This is going to be a very casual. Oh, Heather, awesome. Yeah, that's a good one. That's a good point. Jewish moment. Good evening and thanks for coming is tonight's initial banner, and we're very excited to have tonight's banner that which is sponsored by Chevron. This is the resumption of a custom that never really quite reached the status of being a custom, which is the live stream that I did a couple times on a Thursday night. Someone told me that I don't want to name any names, Lucinda, but someone told me that she rescheduled her piano lessons. That was very compelling to me. And we're doing this on live stream, so I can see your actually it's not just a live stream, it's live stream. It is StreamYard, which is a tool that enables me. I was introduced to StreamYard by the one and only Brian Townsend. Brian Townsend, who explained to me, hey, Balaban! Oh no. Okay, you're coming on. You're coming in. We're gonna just very shortly have you join me up here. I'm definitely gonna be having guests come in from the group, but just you have to just promise me one thing. That if there's any chance whatsoever that you're gonna leave before I get you up here, and if you have any interest in joining me, that you should actually warn me. Hey, very good. We're beginning to warm up. Um, and I'm adjusting myself here in the Montclair, New Jersey studios of the Dillon Law Group, such as they are. I am going to actually use this introductory period to introduce myself to those of you who don't know me. Oh, okay. Thank you, Jeff. I appreciate your candor. Oh, so many great friends are checking in. I'm going to start actually with this question. Why did I become a Christian, sir? Answer. Why would I? What's my favorite trademark? Asks tourist. There are so many wonderful trademarks. I might want to say that the slant is my favorite trademark because it kind of made me a little bit famous. And that would be a pretty good answer that would satisfy everyone, I think. I'm just not sure it's the actual truth. Let me think about that, and if I come up with a better answer in the course of the cast, I'll pipe in on that one. Also Ola, I see. Ola, also an intellectual property lawyer. So, are you a real intellectual property lawyer or just a trademark and unfair competition lawyer like me? No, there is a very substantial school of thought that says that gotta find that blog post for you is what I'm going to do. That trademarks are not intellectual property. Did you know that? Because they're really there's no intellectual component as such in a trademark. It is more what people really mean is that trademarks are abstract property. as opposed to copyrights. Copyrights are intellectual property because they are a tangible um, form of a creative work, and a patent, of course, is typically an invention or a process. Let's see, can I find it here? Getting intellectual. That's what you think. I'm much too old. Much too old. Much too old. No, I'll never find it. Well, one of these days, though, I will. I'll be ready for you. Balaban says, God speaks in Hebrew, so pretty sure you aren't he. Okay, I must have thought. Giga Chick is. We'd love to have you, Giga. I believe me, you would love to have me. I'm quality people, but I can't become a Christian because I am a Jew, and it would be a sin for me to become a Christian. Okay. What was your greatest success in a courtroom? That is such a hard question because there are moments of elation that I have had that were personal to me, and they still have that visceral effect of when I think of my greatest moment in court, it was probably winning my first jury trial in Bergen County Superior Court, but it was not a particularly hard case, which was why they let me try it. And it wasn't a particularly surprising outcome, but it was a great success. On the other hand, wasn't my greatest success. My greatest success has to be the Slants case again, but let's not keep talking about the Slants case. You see my point? Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. You know what I'm saying? But send me an email or something or a message, and I'll get you that blog post. Chester asks, what do I think about the violence going on right now between pro-Palestine and pro-Israel protests? I just saw a firework or improvised explosive device chucked by a pro-Palestinian protester. So what you just saw was a video of an explosive device or a large firecracker. I don't know exactly what it was, thrown on 47th Street between 5th and 6th Avenues in New York. That's not a place where Israel protests take place. That was a place where people buy and sell diamonds, overwhelmingly Jewish people. In other words, the Palestinians are alighting on Jews, not on Israel or Zionist activities, but on Jews. They go into where Jews can be found, and they are attacking them. What do I think of that? I think it's terrorism, and I think that the fact that it is allowed to happen demonstrates to you what phonies our leaders are and law enforcement is about extremism and hate crimes. It's all political for them. What do we got here? Okay. We register in Honduras. Branding requires a lot of attention. Yes, it does. It does. To do it, I mean, depending on your issues, depending on the brand and where it has to go. But yes, it has become an extremely valuable. Brands have become extremely valuable in the modern economy. It's been good for lawyers and good for companies that do licensing. The expansion of the Lanham Act about 40 years ago. Was it about 40? Yeah, about 40 years ago, to include basically stuff that is approved or endorsed, but not necessarily the source of merchandise, which basically created the branding revolution and the merchandising revolution. On the one hand, has distorted the public conception of what trademarks are, and has distorted the business's conception of what they cannot and can protect. But it has created billions and billions and billions of economic activity. What is my favorite 80s hair band? In the 80s, I was a new wave guy. Another question, Kyle. Love seeing me on here. Any movement with Gavin's SPL suit? This is very frustrating for me. It's now officially over 2 years since all submissions were completed in the Middle District of Alabama in Gavin McInnes's lawsuit against the Southern Poverty Law Center for defamation and other claims. This is a suit that was considered by my critics to be so fundamentally meritless and stupid that it would be thrown out on Rule 11. Narrator, no Rule 11 motion was ever made. And it would be dismissed in 10 minutes. So after the SPLC requested like an additional 6 weeks to respond to this obviously meritless lawsuit, the judge has sat on it for 2 years. And I actually commissioned some research recently just to make sure I wasn't missing anything after 30 years of practice, whether there is anything really we can do about it. And the answer is there really isn't anything we can do about it. You can in some cases make a motion to the Court of Appeals in the given circuit requesting a writ of mandamus, and that they require the lower court to act on a motion. But it's considered to be not a very wise thing to do. And we thought, I did some more research. Basically, you need years and years. It's only been 2 years. So until something changes, there's nothing much we can do about it. And I wish I could tell you more, especially because there are people who donated to this lawsuit, and some people quite unfairly. Here we go. I just want to get you a picture of the lawsuit. Oh, that's just a picture of my blog post for the lawsuit. Anyway, yeah, you believe what I was. No movement. Not much we can do, but we are considering all our issues. Were you surprised? The question is, when SCOTUS said no standing, not the first 14 times, but the 15th or 16th times, when essentially what I was surprised at was that the Supreme Court, not only that the Supreme Court majority, but that the Supreme Court with no public dissent essentially ruled that sub silentium, as we say, that election fraud is the law of the land. I think that was very, very disappointing. And I am still not particularly, at peace with it. Let me take a little bit of, if I'm going to talk for like an hour, right? Then I gotta hydrate. Please forgive me the indignity of drinking from the bottle. Mitch says like this. Recent reporting states that Biden's admin will hire SPLC for extremism guidance. No surprise there. SPLC is part of the Democrat Party, and the Democrat Party is the government in this country. I do think, however, that will result in some complications involving state action, because a lot of what the SPLC does is a spur to censorship. So by being in the censorship, it'll have to either essentially leave the censorship business, which I think it really doesn't want to do, or stay outside of the government. And he says President Trump felt he could drain the swamp via the courts. He probably did feel that way. I do think that his effect on the courts is significant, and it will be felt for a very long time. But it will not be what it should have been for two reasons. One is that the Supreme Court has been so disappointing. And the other one is that the socialization of the court has failed. at least so far. Courts are don't only decide cases based on the law. They respond to other signals and other criteria. One of those is what other judges are doing. And conservative judges have mostly demonstrated fear of departing from the consensus of their judicial colleagues. That's a problem. And it's something that I've written and spoken about quite a bit, including right now. And he has another question. So, given the political status of our courts, will we be able to accomplish it? Oh, so that's like a follow-on from your previous comment. And the answer to the question is, I do not think the courts will be able to do what we had hoped they would do. I do think that we can say that confidently. Doc, thank you very much. Very kind of you. I will not share that one. So Ed asks, Ed or Dick? Well, you'll straighten that out for me. One of you asks, what is the purpose of law school? And I assume that you mean the cosmic purpose, because you can't be asking me why go to law school. You go to law school because you want to be a lawyer. If you don't want to be a lawyer, you should not go to law school. If you go to law school and don't want to be a lawyer, you are misapprehending the purpose of law school. Now, if you want to ask me, Ed, or is it Dick, why we go to law school, why somebody would want to be a lawyer, that's a very good question. But I'm not, I've written on that topic as well, and I'm not going to, unless people ask more questions about it, I'm not going to revisit that question again. But the purpose of law school is to learn what the basic principles of American law are, learn how to read cases, which is the fundamental basis of our common law system, learn how to read statutes, learn how lawyers and judges read statutes, learn how the administrative legal system works, and learn legal writing and analysis. These things, when you do them and you pay a lot of money to an institution that is accredited by the American Bar Association, get you a law degree that entitles you to sit for the bar exam. If your question is, does law school prepare you for the bar exam? The general rule of thumb is the better a law school prepares you for the bar exam, the worse the law school. I can explain that if anyone feels a need for me to do so. We shall scroll further down, and it's like, oh, we've run out of questions. Now, if it's going to be like that, I will tell you, it's going to be a quick night. But that's okay, because I'm feeling more and more comfortable with the format here and with the technology. And I believe that I'm also able to identify who my real friends are and who they're not. And nothing is more important to me than knowing who my real friends are and who they're not. Nothing. Oh, a couple more comments. Jared wants me to explain. I'm always explaining, Jared. Come on. Where's that? Are you doing one of my shticks, Jared? Explain. The weaponizing of Fibonacci against conservatives is frightening. Where do you see this going? I see this going to a frightening one-party state. It won't look quite like the Big Brother state. It won't look quite like communism or Nazism. It will have all the accoutrements of a traditional American life. But you pick the right things, Kyle, because law enforcement, prosecution, investigation, if those functions are out of place, everything else goes to hell. I mean, there's a domino effect, right? I mean, democracy. We learned in September 2020. I'm sorry, November 2020, that democracy is meaningless if election law is flouted. Election law will be flouted if law enforcement permits it to be flouted. Law enforcement will permit it to be flouted if it is controlled by the same party or the same corrupt people who are flouting it. That's why there are federal voting rights, precisely for that reason. If federal law enforcement and investigation and moral suasion are not used in the voting rights context, they're worthless. Chester has a question. I'm in med school. The vax is required next semester for all eligible students. A family member almost died taking one of them. Do you know about the legality of vax requirements of schools? Yes, it's almost certainly legal for the school to require vaccinations. Although I believe that all the vaccination cases that have taken place in the past here. Yeah, okay. I don't think there have been cases where vaccination requirements have been challenged in the context of a danger to health arising from the vaccination. So that's a little bit different, and that might have an effect on how we measure the question of legality. If what might also be interesting is challenging the way these regulations have been promulgated. Are they part of executive orders? Are they part of a regular rulemaking process? Is there an opportunity for public comment? I don't think the last word has been written on that topic, but all things being equal, prima facie, at first blush, they can require, and a school can require vaccination, and therefore you should get your kids out of public school. And if that's what it takes to get your kids out of public school, then I recommend that you do it. Now, if your job is to teach, then you've got a problem. Expand on that. The interpersonal relationship with bar exam preparedness with the quality of a law school. So the more competitive and the more intellectually oriented a law school is, the more generalized and analytical the educational approach is, and the less it is concerned with teaching details of legal rules in specific jurisdictions. You might say, why would that be the case? The answer is because a monkey can learn the bar exam. If you memorize enough stuff and you have a little bit of legal analysis, you could probably pass the bar exam well before 3 years of law school. The idea of law school is to teach you analytical skills, legal skills, and to some extent for people who might be in a position at some point of influencing policy, either as legislators or as judges or as executives or in any government function or also in private practice. Those things are not in the bar exam, but they are addressed in the better law schools where the professors are more distinguished and the students have stronger backgrounds and more appropriate backgrounds for this kind of analysis. Therefore, we find that often people from top-tier law schools don't do as well in the bar exam as people from local law schools, because people don't go to local law schools to practice anywhere other than in New York. So all the professors do is teach them. I'm giving you New York as an example. Their professors only teach them New York stuff, New York law. Someone who goes to a national law school, as I did, Northwestern University, we hardly ever spoke about Illinois law. Northwestern is in Chicago. We never spoke about Illinois law. We didn't speak about California law or New York law. We spoke about general principles of law on the understanding that people from Northwestern can and do practice all over the United States. And in my case, I didn't have anything to do with Illinois after I graduated law school. So Balaban wants to know what's my favorite Jewish joke. Funny thing about me is that most people think, Jeff, are you back from your ride yet? You have to let me know. Most people think I'm a funny guy, and they're right, but I'm very bad at jokes. So the best I can do is a third of a Jewish joke. A Jew, a Catholic, and a Protestant walk into a bar. The bartender looks up and says, "What is this? Some joke?" Indeed, always. Do I think Hamas will honor this ceasefire we see with Israel? It will, until it doesn't. It never does. Of course, a ceasefire is usually a temporary measure. Ceasefires don't end wars, usually. If not, how do I think it ends? Oh, Balaban's still in the car because I'm going to bring Balaban in when he gets back if I'm still on here. Because that's a Balaban question. So I don't know what Heather's talking about here. I assume she means her dentures. What do I think about the apartheid rhetoric dominating a particular subset of pro-Palestinian advocacy? Well, it's nonsense, but it was legitimized a long, long time ago by mainstream Democratic politicians like Jimmy Carter. It is part and parcel of leftist rhetoric now on the topic of Israel, as meaningless and irrational as it is. And what do I think of it? It's nonsense. I mean, if you would just, the way to analyze such a claim would be to make a column. What are the features of apartheid, and what are the features of the rights of Palestinians in the state of Israel? And then then go check off the column and work through that. But what I think is more important, Chester, and I've said this in a few tweets, is that the right and wrong of these matters are rather irrelevant at this point. It's 2021. Most of the people who are the most active and who are in the position of making changes or making policy or mattering or speaking on the topic, they've chosen their side. This is a side choosing experience. Gibson, you're cool. This is a matter of choosing sides and finding the right rhetoric to gather as many people from the center into your own camp. Arguments, I have good friends on Twitter who are still tweeting Golda Meir's quote about there'll be peace in the Mideast when the Palestinians love their children more than they hate Jews. Something like that, right? People who on Twitter mostly don't know who Golda Meir was, and they're not interested in the argument is so past that. It's a matter of right now of power. Who's going to have the power? Who's going to exercise the power? Where will the level of shame be drawn? Where will the line of shame be drawn? The Democratic Party, as far as I can tell, has demonstrated that it has a great deal of tolerance for that line. Although, to her credit, Nancy Pelosi, unlike Chuck Schumer, despicable Chuck Schumer, finally came out and supported Israel earlier in the week, or maybe it was even late last week. That to me, is where the issue is. It's all about politics and policy, alliances, who benefits from what discourse is tolerable. And to some extent, to some extent, the use of the apartheid and the Nazi metaphors for Jews and Zionists, and the harassment of Jews and the hate crimes against Jews is useful because when I say useful, I mean that in a rather cynical way, but as disappointing as it is useful for demonstrating the extent of hypocrisy about people who talk about or wring their hands or clutch their pearls, if you will, about hate speech. And you see what a lie it was from go. Back to you, Chester. Appropriate comparison to South Africa would be Hamas is more like the radical criminals murdering old and vulnerable white farmers because they are settlers. Yeah, that's a very good point, Chester, and I give you all the power. I give you all the credit in the world for that. Thank you, Heather. NC wants to know, how do I think the presidential committee looking at packing the Supreme Court will justify their preconceived recommendation that court packing is what is needed? I mean, that's a good question. I guess they'll say that because it's too hard to amend the Constitution and solve the real problem, which is lifetime tenure, it's necessary to find some other way to avoid the disparate impact on constitutional law of this most undemocratic institution. Court packing, therefore, will have the effect of ensuring a more representative court. It's amenable to being undone just as easily as it was done. And to oppose it would be racist. I mean, if in doubt, that's where you go, right? Jeff, how you doing? Am I watching the progress of the Michael Dougherty Senate race in Georgia? And if so, do I think it has legs? Jeff, great question. No. It's a shame, too. This is Jared again offering himself to be a guest on Coleman Nation. Jared, I'll be quite frank with you. I'm saving you for when I need a little extra boost in interest. For now, I'm using nondescript people that nobody's ever heard of, and when I'm ready to break the glass, so to speak, and call in Jared Chambers, that's when I'll be giving you that call. And thanks for pretending we haven't already recorded an episode. So what else have we got here? I'll tell you a little bit. I already did a video a while ago about my background. Oh, see, Chester is full of questions, and it's a darn good thing too. I should read some Chesterton, shouldn't I, Chester? One of the more vehement voices in England against the eugenics movement, eugenics and other evils. I've got to put that on my reading list, and I thank you for that recommendation. I frequently see quotations from Chesterton being tweeted or otherwise embedded in content by people I respect. Thank you, Jared. I appreciate your appreciation. So I have been with the Dillon Law Group for, what is it now? This is the 5th month of the year. I started in August, so 12 months, 9 number of months now. And people say to me, Ron, you've had so many jobs. You've had more jobs than any other lawyer I know. And I have. Let me make this very clear. I've had more law firm jobs than any lawyer you know guaranteed I must, because no one could possibly have as many jobs as I've had. And these are good jobs. I've been a partner in a lot of these jobs. I'm happy for the first time in my life, in my professional situation, not just with the money. Money's okay. I once made a lot of money being partners with a bunch of people who were creeps and whose creepiness is never far from my mind. I wasn't happy when I was partners with those creepy people. I'm happy being a partner with Harmeet Dillon because we have a very similar idea of how to practice law. She's not nearly as stiff as she pretends to be. She's a lot of fun, just as I'm not as loose as I pretend to be. We have very, very comparable values. Our professional standards are similar. We have a lot of the same friends. And I have a lot of independence, but I still have the benefit of people I respect and who have excellent experience working with me, looking over my shoulder in a responsible way so that we can all do the best possible work together. So I thank you for that question, Ron. Have I ever spoken with Ben Stein? That's a conversation I'd like to listen to. I'll tell you what, CH, I would have loved to speak to Ben Stein. He's still alive, but I've stopped chasing after him. There was a while, I used to love Ben Stein when I used to get the American Spectator. Let me show you something cute. It's so funny you mentioned this. I haven't even had a chance to scan this yet, so I don't know if it's going to work. Yeah, here's me. Yes, that's me with a clean shaven face and dark brown hair, reading the American Spectator in a chair somewhere. I don't quite recognize that chair. Sometime, I would assume in the 1980s. Okay, I loved Ben Stein. I learned a lot from Ben Stein. And a couple of times I sent him emails on topics of mutual interest. He was gracious. This was before email was quite so ubiquitous. And I had kind of figured out what his email was. And I wrote to him and I think I wished him consolation on the passing of his father. He wrote a beautiful column about that. We're going to talk about a very long time ago. I would love to talk to Ben Stein, but we've never met, unfortunately. What's your opinion on Carter Page case? Dismissed due to time. I knew the case was dismissed. I don't know what due to time means. So someone's going to have to fill me in, and then I'll try. Then I'll give my utterly informed, hip pocket opinion. C. Hall, Lover, I assume you're talking about Harmeet. They are blessed to have me. Thank you, Graham. It's nice you feel that way. I hope that my other partners feel that way as well. Yeah, she is cool. Lainey says, I quit social media, but happy to see you here live, Ron. Thank you, Lainey. You are, of course, participating on some level in social media right now. That's fine. I won't, far be it from, listen, I mean, there are so few viewers of this live stream that I frankly appreciate everyone who's here, even if they're in denial about being here. Thank you, CH. Back to Chester. Chester is an intellect. Let me just the record reflect that Chester is, as you would expect from the signals he sends in his choice of icons, is a rejection of the, quote, scientifically organized state possible in my lifetime. Oh, and the full title of the Chesterton book was Eugenics and Other Evils, an Argument Against the Scientifically Organized State. I think I'd have to have read the book to see how Chesterton uses the phrase, because I think that you would agree with me, Chester, that Do you have an account called GK Hillary by any chance? Um, there is a lot of controversy around the name, or rather the word science. We have seen it abused considerably in the last year, more than we ever thought possible. So who knows what science really is? Uh, there was a time when philosophers and students of religion and even theologians took it upon themselves to make a science of religion. This was error. The scientific method is marvelous, but it is not amenable to assessing the claims of religion. Now, is it? Jeff asks the question that he asks himself, not every night when he goes to sleep, but every half an hour. If I could do it all over again, would you go to law school? Jeff, I do ask myself that question every half an hour because I don't really know what else I would do. I mean, I've mismanaged my legal career terrifically. That's one thing. But I do know that what I'm doing right now, I like very much. And I've achieved a lot of things that I don't know if I would have ever achieved them in any other field. I look around and I see people who've made a lot more money than I have, not only in the legal profession, of course, but doing things like selling stuff, selling fruit juice, buying companies that sell fruit juice or juice that has no fruit in it at all. And they're multimillionaires, or they trade things. And my problem is, I don't think I would find that kind of activity meaningful, even though I would very much like to have a lot more money than I do. I know that it's possible, as some people have done, to make a lot of money relatively early in life and then to be engaged in the stuff they want to do. The social change it might be, or the commentary, or the having the platform, or just giving away money perhaps for the rest of their lives. But I mean, that's kind of a fantasy scenario. So Jeff, I think I am a natural lawyer. I think I have, there's some aspects of my personality and my makeup that are not ideal for law, but there's some that I think that are very, very well suited for law. So I guess the answer is, Jeff, I probably would have done a lot of things differently coming out of law school compared to what I did when I did go to law school, or the choice of going to law school. But I bet you would be very similar. I bet your answer would not be all that different. And Eleni is explaining where she had been a true follower, and that's it. Eleni was those 30,000 people who left for all kinds of reasons. Hey! Toast. Okay, Cheryl. Judge ruled in February, Dominion and Maricopa required to climb subpoenas, right? And they didn't, did they? How they get away with ignoring the judge? No accountability. I do not know. One answer, however, is that the lack of federal law enforcement, which we spoke about earlier in the live stream, made it possible. Because again, if the same local authorities that make the rules are the authorities that enforce the rules, that are the authorities that enforce even attempts at enforcing the rules, you're going to have abuse. So, for example, when we were in Pennsylvania, we had a court order which was ignored until, and they kept ignoring it until a higher court overruled it, as it was expected to do, because it's a political court. But in the interim, we had this court order, and it was ignored by the Philadelphia Board of Elections. And when we called the sheriff and said, look, we've got a court order here and they're disobeying it, he said, can't help you with that. That's what happens. That's how you get away with it. Heather says, I wouldn't be me if I hadn't gone to law school. I am some version of happy. Yes, I would. No, you're right. I wouldn't be me. But who says being me is any good? The wisest thing in the world is to cry out before you're hurt. It's no good to cry out after you're hurt, especially after you are mortally hurt. I think I must have, you're following up on that's a quote from the GKC eugenics book. More, says Chester, it's often essential to resist a tyranny before it exists. It is no answer to say that the scheme is only in the air. A blow from a hatchet can only be parried while it is in the air. Yes, I mean, both of those quotes go to the famous moot issue, which is what I think somebody asked me about, having to do with both the Supreme Court and also somebody else that asked me about the other case, about what's his name case, Carter Page. Why is crime so easy and justice takes so much time and work? Destruction is always easier than construction. It is also easier to take what is earned or made by others than to earn or make it yourself. So they're easy. It's easier to kill someone than to save someone that someone has tried to kill. It's easier to hurt someone than to deal with the pain that causes you to want to hurt yourself. Crime is easy. Why is it not enforced? Well, why are the laws against crime not enforced? Sometimes they are. We've reached a point, however, where one of the real inherent dilemmas of democracy has come home to roost, which is that just as democracy entails, no one really knows who said this, just as we know that in democracy entails a process by which voters keep voting themselves other people's money until they run out of it, it also entails a process by which they vote themselves permission to commit crimes if they feel that they're more likely to benefit from crime than they are from protection from crime. Moreover, and I say benefit from crime, that includes benefiting because members of their families or their friends benefit from crime, and the incarceration of those people would be hurtful or cause difficulty for those people. Democracy is at a supreme moment of crisis, largely because of what liberalism has done to the social and moral and political fabric in urban counties in the United States. You know what, NC? I don't like most of those people. Michael asks, do you think the courts are scared of actual civil war if they took up the voter fraud cases and it was found that the election was stolen? I find that hard to believe. I think, however, that they are scared, just plain scared, because people who are fearful by nature and risk averse, and by the way, one of the aspects of my personality, since I was asked this question, that is not ideally suited to being a lawyer is that I'm not quite risk averse on the one hand, and not quite enough of a gambler on the other hand. I mean, I think there are lawyers who gamble big and win big and risk losing big. And there are lawyers who show up on time every time, forever, and do things the way everyone else does things forever and do very, very well if they're decently well trained and talented. So most lawyers, especially those who become judges, are risk averse. And people who are risk averse are tend to be scared, tend to be subject to fear. I don't think anyone on the Supreme Court is literally fearful that a civil war will break out, but I think that they're fearful that their reputations will suffer, that they will be reviled and unpopular, that history perhaps, or the editorial page of the Washington Post and the New York Times will treat them unkindly. That is a contemptible sort of fear for someone who seeks and obtains power to answer to. And he asks thoughts on the Oregon vaccine passports. I think Oregon is in the process of cleaning itself out of people with spines and decency. This question was already asked. And we could be running out of questions again. Michael again asked, do we think we're at a tipping point? We most certainly are. I frequently go through this very exercise with the brilliant, talented, and uber attractive Mrs. Jane Coleman, where we try to figure out what are the scenarios by which we can recover the situation. And William Durant was asked, let me say this. William Durant was asked by the great historian and student of philosophy and the classics, William Durant, was asked by a journalist whether he would agree that the most significant figure in modern history was Karl Marx. And in the process of rejecting that proposition, he said, really, you have to appreciate that Marx's achievements come in the context of 500 years of modern history, during which religious faith has diminished steadily. Nothing has been more destructive of morality and civilization than that. This is from someone who actually himself was a lapsed Catholic. He was not a religious man, but he was nonetheless able, as an historian, to recognize that. Heather, I'm going to get to you in a second, actually. I'm going to go back. I'm still answering the Michael question. That's my fault. I clicked the wrong button. If people don't believe in traditional notions of God, or even less traditional ones, even deistic ones, there is a God, there is absolute morality, there is justice, there is a hereafter. They may not be a deist concept, but the point is, in this sort of post-religious civilization that we live in, outside the Muslim world, how do you restore, if culture is indeed upstream to politics, how do you restore politics without restoring culture? And how do you restore culture without restoring religious belief? I know there are a lot of stops in between there, but I'm not sure how you do it. So we often ask ourselves, what are we efforting about so much here? Why do I spend so much time fighting these cases and making a fool of myself and doing live streams for a paltry 50 people? What do I hope to affect? Will I push back the reckoning far enough that even my grandchildren who are born now, much less my future grandchildren and their children, will possibly benefit from my efforts? One thing is, Michael, that I might. It's possible that I might. I have already, in my professional life rather, achieved more in terms of having an effect on things than I ever thought I could, or that I was ever thought it was likely that I could. And secondly, I think there is a moral imperative to fight, because ultimately God runs the world, and we are obligated not to complete the task, but not to excuse ourselves from it either. Heather wants to know, what do I think about Texas secession? I haven't studied the matter. I have heard it said that Texas, unlike the other states, has a right to secede. If it were to happen, it would be a disaster for the United States of America, and probably wouldn't be so great for Texas either. But I like the idea that it could act as some sort of leverage, that it would be a disaster for our country. That's nice, Nancy, that you think about. Now, so we might not be thinking of the same people. I mean, I'm very friendly with Barnes, and I'm friendly with quite a lot of them. Randazza, people who do YouTube. Some of them are my friends. Some of them are quite good friends, like Joe Neerman. I understand that I could jack up my follower rates and my live stream rates by getting in with other people, and the time might come when that'll happen organically. But I'm a little bit suspicious of log rolling, and in fact, if you'll take a look at people I have interviewed for my podcast so far, they're not necessarily people that you've seen me particularly busy with in my Twitter conversations. I know that most of my friends from Twitter, including people with much more influence than I have, will gladly come on the show. But I want to try to get outside of this one hand washes the other situation. I don't want to owe people, favors if I can avoid it. So I'm trying to kind of do things a little bit different way. I want to have a good following because it's sorry about that boo-boo there. I want to have a nice big following, because the more, if you do this, you're obviously interested in being heard by people and having influence. I don't pretend otherwise, but just as I'm not going to do any cheesecake shots, sorry, gang. For now, that's my approach on this. This is a great story. Yes, the 1619 Project author was denied tenure at North Carolina. Can the institution survive a challenge? Yeah, no, it definitely can. Well, I mean, it can, but I mean, judges do what they want now, so I don't really know. I mean, this does not strike me as a federal issue, so it's going to be a matter of state law. North Carolina is not a terrible state to be in for that. Someone in my timeline, a friend of mine, I don't remember right now who it was, please excuse me, mentioned that there were actually probably wasn't such a big deal for her, really, because the chancellor at the university will keep her on as long as she wants to stay there. And job security is the main thing. We're coming up to the hour mark, so I'm going to probably be winding this down in the next 10 or 15 minutes. Kyle asks, given how lower courts ignore SCOTUS rulings like Heller, do you think a national divorce is coming? Kyle, you have to define who is divorcing from whom. Why do I think Marxism and its successors now dominate culture? Because people are remarkably poorly educated now. They don't know history, they don't know geography, they don't know economics, they know fields. most of the people who claim to be Marxists know very little about the economic theories of Marxism. They do like the broad what appeals to them about Marxism is its contempt for uh, bourgeois values and for things that normal, rational people take for granted, like ownership of their property, the ability to make decisions about their own lives. It is the facile aspects of Marxism that appeal to people. Marxism gives them permission to act out on their impulses of being selfish and resentful of other people. But if they were actually to be exposed to the concepts of ownership of the organs of production by the proletariat and how that would actually happen, the means of production, I'm sorry, by the proletariat, and how that would actually have to look, and the real vague failure of Marx to really put a point on a lot of the really impractical. I don't mean impractical as in idealized. I just mean he doesn't really explain how stuff, the evolution from socialism to communism. He never really explains it. People aren't the people who call themselves Marxists. They just simply don't have the capacity to deal with this. They just know it's like the kid who draws a swastika on his school desk. He doesn't know anything about the Nazis. He knows that they're the bad guys, and if he wants to shock and horrify you with what a bad boy he is, he will put a swastika. So everyone is fighting with their imagined mommy and daddy who are horrified about Marxism. In reality, nobody cares about anything. I hope that answered your question, Leon. Michael asked, is a funny pronunciation, the history behind it. So it turns out that it is a hoary, meaning an ancient, variation of pronunciation in the English language. It's not uncommon at all for hard K sounds and S's to be exchanged and to actually end up permanently exchanged in the language. It is, however, associated with certain social classes and predominantly with inner city Black speech and Southern speech. And that is what has made it so predominant, because as our dominant culture tells you, Black people, who make up somewhere, 10 to 15% of the American population, are actually the ones who decide what everyone will buy and how everyone will speak, and are the only actors available for advertising. You're welcome, Jared. You're welcome, Lanny. Chester, the participant who doesn't stop giving. Should there be freedom of religion during a pandemic? Of course. Freedom of religion is an absolute. Pandemics, there's no moral foundation, there's no moral argument for a pandemic being any more of a catch-all exception to civil rights than any other condition that might afflict the public good. The courts, and especially the Supreme Court, have done abominably in acknowledging that fact, and a tremendous reckoning will take place as a result. Lloyd, I'm sorry you missed this, but it is going to be available on YouTube almost immediately, as I understand it. I thank everyone for coming. I will never forgive those of you who are who do not hear what I'm saying right now, but who should be hearing it. You know who you are, although you don't know that I'm saying this now. But thank you, everyone. I think that the next time I do this, thank you, Annie. Next time I do this, I will have a guest, because I understand that does tend to schlep more people in. But this is a little bit kind of funny. Cheryl, no, I don't have favorites, because I don't really know. I don't know who's who yet. I've been told who my favorite should be by a few people, which is Rizzo. But if he doesn't follow me on Twitter, it might not go well for him. Good night, everyone.